leveraging Google Plus and Hangouts. Vincent, who is the VP of Product at Uber Conference, has been kind enough to join us. He's got a great presentation today. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and turn over the presentation to Vincent. So Vincent, if you want to go ahead and get started, I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks, Andrew. Hi, everyone. My name is Vincent Paquet. As Andrew mentioned, I'm the VP of Product for Uber Conference. Today I'm going to talk about leveraging Hangouts in Hangout and Google Plus, and actually Uber Conference as well. But generally about leveraging Hangouts for your organization and how to leverage communication within your organization. So I'm going to use a few slides to do that. So I think everyone should be able to see those slides now.
Yep, you're good.
So let me start with just a quick background on Uber Conference. Uber Conference is actually a service that was launched back in May 2012 at TechCrunch Disrupt, which the company ended up winning. We're based out of San Francisco, and we're funded by Google Ventures and Andreessen Horowitz. I would say if I had to give you a 2-minute summary of what makes Uber Conference different, I'd say we make conferencing simple and easy to use. We feel like the market for conferencing is basically today most products out there on the market are somewhat difficult to use, and we try and solve all the pain points of conferencing. It starts with no PIN, so you get your own phone number and no one needs to actually dial a PIN to join your conference. We give you a visual interface for your conference, so at any point you can see who's on the conference, you can see who's talking, and if you need to mute someone, you can easily do that. So we basically leverage the web as the UI to your conferences as opposed to try and have you learn a list of very complex command or codes, DTMF codes to control your conference. We offer screen sharing, doc sharing. We can let you join your conference through the web, from your computer through WebRTC. Our free service allows you to have unlimited conference calls with up to 10 participants. And then we have pro and business accounts that lets you have up to 100 people on your calls. Very quickly, the reason I mentioned this is we do have a number of integration with Google that I'll go over the first one because I think it's very relevant to this presentation. But we do have a Hangouts app. Then we have a Docs add-on. We have the ability to join your call through WebRTC, as I just mentioned. We also have a Chrome extension app. And a Chrome extension and a Chrome app, and then the ability to present documents that are in Drive within Uber Conference. Briefly on me, I was previously, for the last 5 years before joining Uber Conference, I was the product manager for Google Voice. After Google Voice acquired Grand Central, which I co-founded with Craig Walker. Prior to that, I was at Yahoo, basically working on the service called Yahoo Voice, which was the ability to place phone calls from Yahoo Messenger. And that was after Yahoo acquired Dialpad, where I used to run a business development. So communication is definitely something I'm very interested in, and I've been in for a long time. So I'm very excited to be able to share some tips about how to leverage Google Plus and Hangouts within your organization. So what I'm going to cover today, I'll cover very quickly Google Plus. Google Plus is a very extensive product. So I certainly don't claim to give you a detailed overview, but I'll cover the interesting piece about it in terms of internal communications. I will spend a lot more time on Hangouts because I think Hangouts is a very cool product that is not necessarily as well known as it should be, and can be leveraged very interestingly within a company. And then I'll also explain how to leverage the benefit of Hangouts plus Uber Conference, and this is where you'll see how it is very relevant because it actually allows you to mix the world of video and the world of phone conferencing. So moving on, a quick word about Google Plus. As I mentioned, Google Plus is a very extensive product. It allows you to manage things from posts to pictures to events. The interesting piece is that I think from the get-go it's been compared to Facebook, but what I've come to notice is that it is very efficient as an internal communication tool for both internal and external actually, but with your business contacts. I think what I've come to see is that a lot of people who will use Facebook for their personal, as a personal social network, end up using Google Plus as their business social network. It's a very well-made tool that allows you to be very granular as to who you share information with. So it allows you to share. I have a screenshot here, but it's very efficient as a way for the CEO of your organization or anyone within your organization to share thoughts, articles, and information that would be really useful for the rest of the team. As I mentioned, you can share this information in a very granular way. You can share it only within your organization, or you can share it with groups of people outside of your organization. So it's very easy to have, to make a circle. So Google Plus has this concept of circle, which is basically groups of people that you can pre-set. So that when you go and share an article, you can decide to share it with your sales team, or with your marketing team, or with your finance team, or with all your, say, prospects. So you can very easily categorize all your contacts and share information with them. On the flip side, it also allows you to subscribe to other people's Google Plus feed, which allows you to stay in touch with your contacts. So it's, if you're working with, make sure you follow people from your large customers, because this is a great way to know what they're following and what to stay in touch with. So again, Google Plus is actually, enable for your organization. It's very easy for anyone to set up their account as you set up their initial account, and I would certainly recommend it as a way to stay abreast of what's going on in your world. So moving on to the core of this presentation on how to leverage Hangouts. So what I want to do briefly before going into actual features is take a second to to actually define what Hangouts is. There's definitely been a little confusion I've seen around me as to what Hangout is exactly, because it actually does a lot of things. But think of Hangouts as, at the high level, as a chat and video client. It is the combination of what used to be several products within Google that are now merged together into one single UI, What used to be called Google Talk or Google Chat within Google, that was the ability to chat with other people. So if you take Google Talk chat/chat, you add multi-party video and mobile client on Android and iOS. This is basically what Google Hangouts is. It mostly surfaces through two types of functionality. So the ability to do video calls with anyone with a Google account, or the ability to chat with those same people. The good thing is you can actually, go back and forth between those two features. So it's very easy to chat with someone and then launch into a video call from there. Couple of additional points. As of now, you can only do video with people that have a Google account. But the good news is actually a lot of people do have one. Most Android users actually end up having a Google account when they set up their phone. And Google account can be a Google Apps account. It can also be a Gmail account. So there's definitely a lot of those out there. And then the default number of participants on Hangout is 10, but for Google Apps users, you can get it up to 50. So in terms of I'll go over a few screenshots showing actually the difference between what used to be chat and what is now Hangout. So I know a lot of users out there still have the old chat interface, so I want to explain exactly how those two UI differ. But you do have so on the left here is the chat roster in Gmail, which is probably what most of you were used to. And in Hangout, it actually now lives both in Gmail, if you still use it from Gmail, but it also lives in Chrome and it stays always on top. So this is actually one of the major improvement of Hangouts, in my opinion, is that chats used to be stuck in Gmail. So if you were working on different windows or different tabs of your browser, it was very difficult to figure out when you had new chats. There was a small visual clue at the top of the tab, but that only works if you were already in your browser. And it was easy to when phone calls were coming in or when new chats were coming in, it was easy to hear the audio notification and spend, a few seconds trying to figure out where that window was. With Hangouts, the chat window stays on top at all times. So it's very, very practical because as you move between different applications, then that chat window stays on top. And it's when you minimize it, it actually falls down, so it doesn't block your screen. But as soon as anyone will reply, the header of that window will actually blink, and but it remains on top, and it's very easy to carry on your conversation. There's also there's a couple of features you can in chat today. You can also do phone calls. This is something that is not necessarily very well publicized or very well known, but so both the chat client and the Hangout client. So the new Hangout client allows you to do that. This is on the left is how the chat client used to surface that functionality. And on the right is how Hangout does it. So at the very top, next to your icon, you have a little magnifying glass, and if you type any phone number there, click on call, it will now launch into a Hangout and call that number. So this is actually a little known feature of Hangout, but that is very useful because it allows you to call any phone numbers in the US for free. And the added benefit, if you do have a Google Voice number, is that those calls will display your Google Voice number natively. As a side note, the Hangout call setup is slightly longer. I think the move to Hangout made it a little longer in terms of call setup. Hopefully, Google will address that added latency on launching a Hangout to place a phone call. But otherwise, the functionality remains the same. The one thing I also wanted to mention is kind of understand how to launch or to invite people to a Hangout. So think of Hangout as, probably in my opinion, one of the best ways to communicate with people and do video calls with people. So there's actually 4 main ways to invite people to a Hangout. The first one is the calendar invites. So as you create a new event in your calendar, there's very nifty integration between calendar and Hangouts that allows you to automatically include a Hangout in any new calendar invites. I believe this is now the default on new accounts, but for a lot of you out there, this may or may not be on. So this is something that is actually, it's a setting within your calendar app on the admin panel. If you go under Google Apps, under the Google Apps, for calendar, there's a sharing setting, and make sure that the box that says automatically add video calls to events created by a user is checked. What that means is that every time one of your users will create a new calendar invite, there will be a Hangout link that people can click on to join the video call automatically. So this is a very, very useful feature, especially within your organization, because by default, everyone within your organization will have access to that. And so it allows to make sure that, whenever someone cannot make a meeting in person, there's always a Hangout link, and you don't waste 10 minutes trying to figure out, oh, how do we get so-and-so conferenced in because he's working from home today, or, she could not make it, or she's stuck in traffic. Again, the Hangouts application is available even from mobile phones, so it's very, very useful to have a Hangout link with every single calendar event for your organization. So the Hangout link also appears within your Hangout. So if you start a Hangout, there's a way to add participant at the bottom. And when you bring out this window, it actually gives you 3 additional ways to invite other people. There is a link that you can copy and paste. So you can send it through email, you can send it through chat, and anyone who will click on that link will actually join your Hangout. You can invite them, so add their name. This will autocomplete with anyone in your address book, also in your circles and in your company directory. So it's very useful as you want to add people to your Hangouts. And then there is also this feature in Hangouts that lets you call out to a phone number. So if there's someone you need to join in the call that is not on a phone or not on a smartphone or not in front of a computer, you can just call them.
Hey, Vincent, real quick.
Yes.
It looks like some people are, this is going back a little bit farther, but some people are curious what WebRTC is. Would you mind just defining that real quick for those people who aren't familiar with WebRTC?
Yes, so WebRTC is this technology. So as a bit of background on when you do voice, audio, or video from your computer, you will, the traditional way of doing this over time has been to basically have you download a client. And so it'd be a client for your Mac or a client for your PC, and that client would handle voice and video. With the ever-expanding choice of application that allow you to carry voice or video, there's definitely been a need to try and streamline this so that instead of having you download endless number of clients, the browser could handle voice communication. So WebRTC is actually a framework to carry voice or audio or video through your browser. And so WebRTC has been adopted by Google. So in the Chrome browser, there is WebRTC support. It's been adopted by Firefox, so Firefox supports WebRTC today, and hopefully, some of the other browsers will. I think Opera supports it, although I couldn't confirm. But this allows you to basically use your browser to carry audio and video. And so the first time you use a service, it will ask, your browser will ask you to allow this service to access your microphone and speaker. And after that, it will remember. So it's a very practical way of doing audio and video through your browser, as opposed to having to download multiple apps. So for you, if you're the admin for your domain, it's very useful not to have to deal with permissions of various apps, because you basically can trust Google Chrome to do that for you. So going back to Hangouts, I want to go over a few of the admin controls that are available for everyone for the admin in your admin panel. I think at the high level, it's very important to remember and decide how you want Hangouts to be used. Probably the biggest decision is to decide whether you want to let people do chat and video with people outside of your organization or not. So in my opinion, one of the big benefits is to actually be able to use it with people outside of your organization. But I think it's good to know that there is a way for you to restrict the usage of Hangouts to within your organization. And if you do, so there you will see that Hangouts has actually extensive search capabilities. So if you use the search tool at the top of your roster, it will search not only within your directory, but it will search within basically the whole world of Hangouts users. So sometimes you may end up, talking to the wrong John Smith or trying to contact the wrong John Smith, and they can be over, security and privacy reasons why you'd want to set up or restrict the usage of Hangouts within your organization. So be aware that it's a setting out there. There's also an option to decide whether you want calling to be available for your users. And then there's probably retention policy, which is something to consider, whether you want chats to remain on the record or remain off the record for retention purposes. And then the second big item is probably to decide how to deploy Hangout clients. You can do that through, there are mobile clients available on iOS and Android. And then there's the Chrome extension one that I mentioned earlier on. So going over those quickly, how Hangout should be used. So as I mentioned, by default, Hangout is on. So this is the setting in the Google Apps admin panel. It will have by default, it's also available with people outside of your organization, which again I believe is actually positive, because it allows you to communicate with anyone out there that has a Google account. The good thing that actually happens is that there you can set, and that's I think is the default setting, you can set Hangouts to warn users when having a Hangout outside of your own domain. So that means when you start a chat with someone, it will remind you that this is someone who's not within your organization. So it's when it comes to confidential information or group Hangout as well, where you can have multiple people, it's always a good thing to remember that there are people in this conversation that are not within your organization. And the same goes for video call. You will have a visual reminder for everyone that there are people outside of your organization on this Hangout. The other setting that is below is that, so this is the other setting that's below is the automatic invitation acceptance within your domain. So this is something you definitely want. The way an invite will work is that if you start typing a name of someone within your organization that you've never chatted with, and you will first need to invite them. And so if that person is within your organization, the acceptance of the invite will be automatic, which means that if you just, after clicking on invite, if you come back, you will be able to start chatting with that person. So it's very easy. If you want to chat with someone, one of your colleagues you haven't chatted with, it's basically an instant process. You can invite them and from, right then start chatting, so you can send them a message and you don't have to wait for them to accept. So it's a very good thing to have this within your organization, so you don't have to wait until they actually saw your invite, reply to it before you can start chatting with them, which is the default behavior for anyone outside your organization, meaning that if you try to start a chat with anyone outside of your organization, they will receive an invite. They will have to accept it before you can start chatting, which is very good on the flip side if you think about it, because you don't want some random people to start sending you chat messages. So one feature that I wanted to cover briefly, as I mentioned earlier, it's very little known, but Hangout lets you actually call phone numbers for free within the US. So it's a very nifty feature because by definition, if you use Hangout, you have technically audio and video support. So your computer allows you to actually handle those audio and video feeds. So now your computer becomes a phone. And so you can type, you don't need to, especially if you have poor cell phone reception. It's very useful to have an audio client that will be much better in terms of quality, most likely than your cell phone. So from there, you can call, anywhere in the country for free. And with Hangout, you can also make calls to anywhere in the world. Those calls aren't free, but there is a rate list that Google publishes for those calls. And they're very, very inexpensive. So that can be done from within Hangout. Moving on, one thing I want to cover is the integration of the Uber Conference app. So this is why I was actually pretty excited to go over this presentation. Is that probably one of the biggest single, drawback with Hangout is the fact that it's limited to to people with a Google account, and B, the fact that the integration with phone numbers is somewhat limited. As I mentioned, you can call a phone number from your Hangout. It's probably, it's something that's fairly easy to do if you want to call one, but it becomes, somewhat more cumbersome if you want to call several phone numbers. But the biggest missing piece is that you have no way for people to call into your Hangout. So think of your weekly meeting with your staff. if you do have a number of people that actually can't, call or join from their computer, there is no way for them today to actually call into your Hangout from a phone. And so this is the missing piece that the Uber Conference app will fill. What the Uber Conference app does is it gives callers a dial-in number for your Hangouts. It will be the same for you for all your Hangouts. So from now on, as you enable the Uber Conference app, I'll show it in a second, it will assign you a phone number, and that phone number will be the same that anyone can dial for all your Hangouts. So it's very easy to say that if you have a weekly call, you can include the dial-in information into your invites, and then people, as they dial in, will be patched into your Hangout. So it allows you to have up to 100 people call into your Hangouts, and that's on top of the 15 video participants. The great thing is Hangout has done an amazing job at helping the discovery of apps within Hangout. So as you or anyone actually enables the Uber Conference app within Hangout, everyone else on that Hangouts gets notified that you've enabled an app. They can enable it themselves, and it will display the same Uber Conference information for them, as I will show you in a second. And we also created a dedicated URL that allows you to basically launch a Hangout with your Uber Conference app pre-populated. So anyone who would actually use that link would automatically get the app within their Hangout. That makes it even easier. So let me show you actually what that looks in practice. So this is a screenshot of a Hangout. And so the left piece is probably what you are familiar with if you're Hangout users today. It shows you the main video feed, and then at the bottom there's actually a film strip showing all the other participants in that Hangout. And as you can see, there's one that has a phone number in it, and that is basically the link to the Uber Conference app. And so the Uber Conference app is that additional piece that shows on the right-hand side, and that basically shows everyone who joined from the phone. And so this is where the integration is very interesting, is that instead of seeing just a random phone number at the bottom of your screen, everyone on the Hangout has a very clear visibility of who called in, what their name are, and even can see additional information. So if you see, for example, the tile at the bottom with the 415 number, shows you what happens if you mouse over one of those participants. And so it will have it does have a social contact info. So for a given caller, if you click on that, it will show you their LinkedIn profile, their Twitter feed, their Google Plus profile. So it's very useful to have this information at your fingertip. You can mute individual callers if the typical use case of someone with a dog barking in the background that becomes very disruptive to a conference can be handled very easily here, because you can see who's talking and or who's emitting the sound, and you can mute them individually. And then at the bottom, you have additional call controls for that Hangout/Uber Conference. The most interesting one probably is the ability to record that conference. And so if you click on recording, everyone will be notified that the call is now recorded, and you will get an audio recording of your Hangout/Uber Conference. So again, think of this Uber Conference app for Hangout as a very, very logical extension of Hangout that allows you to use Hangout with anyone who's not, who doesn't have a Google account. So extends it basically to the other 6 billion people who do have a phone number. So it's a very logical extension of the Hangout functionality. And so the way you enable it as an end user, the first time, if you look on the left, when you mouse over the left side of your Hangout, there will be a menu that shows up with the main Hangout features. So by default, you get things like the chat button, you get screen share. And at the bottom, you see 3 dots, and that gives you access to the apps marketplace where you can go and add a new app. The second icon from the bottom is the actual Uber Conference app. So once you've enabled an app, it will be available from our left side menu. So what happens is the first time you go and enable the apps, it automatically creates an Uber Conference with you using your Google account, and it will email you all your conference credentials. And that information will be the same for you every time. And as I mentioned, so once you enable the app will actually make a phone call into Uber Conference, and you'll have to enable that to allow the app to do that. And everyone else on the Hangouts gets notified that you are using the Uber Conference app. And if they click on it, they will be able to install it on their side as well and have the same visual on the right-hand side as you, showing everyone who's dialed into your Hangouts. And anyone, so by default, everyone who enables it gets a free Uber Conference account. And if you do have a premium account, it will let up to 100 people dial into your Hangout.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Vincent. That was a really great presentation. And it looks like we have a lot of really good questions here about Google Plus and Hangouts as well as Uber Conference. So I'm going to try and filter through some of these and answer some of them myself. And I'll pass along a few to Vincent as well. So let's see here. Okay, so a big question here is, can you create and share a Hangout on Air privately and upload it to a private YouTube channel? So by default, Hangouts on Air, as the name would suggest, are public. So there's not really a way to create a private Hangout on Air. What you'll create is called an unlisted Hangout on Air, which is kind of similar to unlisted videos on YouTube, if you're familiar with that at all. So when you're creating your Hangout on Air, you have the choice to invite the public or your circles. So the default option is public, so you want to delete public and then just invite whoever you would like to invite to the Hangout on Air. And it won't be promoted on Google Plus, so nobody will be able to see it except for those people that actually have the link or were explicitly invited. And then when it's concluded, it'll be uploaded to YouTube, and it will be unlisted there as well. So it's private in that you have the only way to access it is with an invite or a direct link.
And I think it's fair to remind people that the reach of your Hangout on Air will be only as good as the reach of your profile on Google Plus. So, even though it may be public technically, that doesn't mean that suddenly the whole world's going to be notified.
That's a good point for sure. Okay, moving along through these. A question about kind of compare. We've gotten a few questions comparing WebEx to Hangouts. And so the question here is, WebEx has the ability to see who has visited your presentation. Does Hangouts have this feature? We'd like to eliminate the cost of using WebEx. I think it's important to distinguish between, just to frame this question, to distinguish between Hangouts on Air and just direct Hangouts. So Hangouts on Air, for example, in this situation, right now there's well over 500 people watching this Hangout on Air. I'm not going to be able to take down everybody's information that has viewed the Hangout on Air. That information isn't exportable through Hangouts on Air. Hangouts directly, and maybe Uber conference as well. Vincent can comment on that. I know since there's a limit, you'll have a good idea of who's on it, but other than that.
So the only way to view a screen share through Hangout is to actually be a participant in that Hangout. So you will view, everyone who views a presentation will show in the film strip at the bottom of your Hangout. So there is really no way for anyone to view your presentation without them knowing. The closest thing to that would be if several people are in the same conference room. Sometimes it's hard to know who's there. But there is definitely the only way to actually see what's being shared on a Hangout is by joining the Hangout. So yes, the answer to that question would be yes, you can see who's actually viewing because you can see them. The way most people would do that usually is that you join the Hangout and you can mute your audio or your video if you just want to see what's being shared on the screen. But it will still show, when you mute your video, it usually shows your avatar. So if it's anyone within your organization, it will show their name. If it's just a random Google account, in general, there's always at least a name or an email address, and there's very often a picture. So it is very well done in that respect.
So a few questions about Google Apps for Education users. The concern there with Hangouts and chat records specifically is that Google Vault doesn't support Hangout archiving. I'm not entirely sure that that is correct. I was doing some quick research during Vincent's presentation to find out some more information on that. And it looks like chats that are on the record, which you can enable in the admin console, chats that are on the record are stored in Google Vault for a period of time. I don't know that it's indefinite, so that's, you may want to do some more research there. I'd also look into a couple of the backup solutions for Google Apps and see if they support Hangout archiving, like our sponsors, Spanning and Backupify. So there are a couple options there. So someone who would like to have Google Plus enabled, I'm assuming, I guess a school would be the example, avoiding users from being suspended from Google Plus due to age verification. So the question is, can you add a default date of birth for the domain? I don't think that you can add a default date of birth for a domain, but what you can do is you can do a mass export of your users using a tool like Flash Panel and change the date of birth to something that is that can passes the age verification, and then you can re-upload those users so they're the correct age. But yeah, so I guess that's a kind of a workaround there. Is there a way to force users in their first login to create a Google Plus profile? No, I don't believe that there is. You can obviously enable Google Plus and you can enable it for a specific set of users, but you can't force anyone to create a profile.
I think that's right. There are a number of places where the Google Plus profile will be required to access some features. The most notable is if you want to do a Hangout with more than one participant, I think you will get prompted to create a Google Plus account. That's the only way. So in a sense, that's probably your best bet. But yeah, today there's no way to force users to do that.
Yeah, so that's a good point. I mean, if you're onboarding new users or a group of users, you can invite them all at once to view a Hangout, and then that'll prompt them to get started creating their Google Plus profile. So that's kind of a workaround there. A question here for Vincent about Uber Conference. Does Uber Conference have a team structure available? So for an admin account with multiple sub-accounts?
Yes, we do. We have free products. We have a free service. We have a pro account that gives you basically additional functionality, mainly the fact that you can have up to 100 participants in your account, in your conferences. You still have an unlimited amount of conferences, and the Pro account also lets you dial out to participants, and it gives you international access number. All of that for $10 a month. And then we have what's called the business account that allows you to deploy Pro accounts across your organization. So it's basically one bill for as many accounts as you want.
Yeah, and I'd also like to remind everybody, as part of Admin Training Week, Uber Conference is offering 1 month free of their service. So if you'd like to claim that, just during checkout, use the promotional code GOORU, GOORU, to claim that free month of service. So another question about Google Plus. This is a topic that I really like. How good is Google Plus as an internal corporate social network? Vincent touched on this a little bit, but we actually here at our company we use Google Plus all the time internally. The best way that I would suggest doing that is setting up a private community that only people inside your domain can access. And this is great, rather than sending emails out to the entire company, which can get lost in an inbox or bogging down people's inbox. Using a Google Plus community, making sure that it's private so nothing can be shared externally, is a really, really good option. You can also set up, different sections for different locations. So, for example, if you have an office in, in New York and San Francisco, you can post, relevant topics in those different sections. So there's a lot of really good options there.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like the biggest use case we tend to see is, what you used to do when you'd send, like there's a lot of interesting articles that you'd want to send to your team on a regular basis. And, you used to do that through email, and then that would potentially generate a never-ending email thread as anyone chimes in with their own opinion on the subject, which is great, except your inbox is not the best place to do that. So this is where Google Plus excels, because it will remember by default the last set of circles you shared something with. So if you share things with your team on a regular basis, it's very easy to put an article there. Everyone in your team will be notified. They can see, they can comment on it, but it doesn't clog your inbox. It's a very efficient communication tool. And actually, I would say even internally, but it also works very well externally. And it's like I definitely get most of my, information and updates from a lot of the people I follow through Google Plus.
Yeah, absolutely, and Google Plus is a great resource for if you're new to Google Apps. Google Plus is a great resource for learning more about Google Apps. People that are active in the Google Apps community are also very active on Google Plus. A question about about GoToMeeting. You can give someone control of your keyboard and mouse, kind of remote in to a desktop. There is a feature in Hangouts. It's an app that you need to enable. It's the Remote Desktop app, I believe. Yeah, Remote Desktop. So someone you can allow someone to, take control of your desktop and remote in there. A few more questions here. I'm going to try and wrap up as quickly as possible. Somebody asking for a cheap webcam microphone device for conference room solutions. If you're not familiar with it, I would suggest taking a look at Chromeboxes for Meeting. That's a really great option. It comes with a microphone and a speaker, and I believe a camera as well. So that's a really good option, and that integrates really well with Google Apps, and it can be managed inside the admin console. So that's a really good solution there. Vincent, one more question about Uber Conference. If Uber Conference is always using the same phone number, if your account is using the same phone number and no PIN is required, how do you stop someone that's not invited to a meeting from joining?
That's a good question. So, few things on the pin. The pin is not a security tool, as people would like to have you believe. The reason you have a pin today on a lot of conferencing services was because back in the days when first conference call came out, phone numbers were expensive, and so there would be one single shared phone number for every conferences, and the pin was the only way to allocate your call to a given conference. As a tool for security, it never works. If you will see that basically the way people communicate pins today is they will send the pin with the conference number every time because you need it. So whether it's sending you a phone number or sending you a phone number and a pin, the information is there. Worse, actually, what I've seen is most people, like in my experience, about 80% of the time when people send the conference information, not only do they include the participant pin, they include the organizer pin because they just copy and paste the whole thing. So I would say as a security tool, the pin is not very efficient at all. So not to answer the question, what we do is, so yes, once you know the phone number, you can call back and get into that conference. Although there is a visual interface to Uber Conference, so as soon as someone joins your conference, you'll be notified. You can see who joined. You can kick them out. And if you want, you can actually lock your call. So if everyone you wanted in your call has joined, you can easily lock it and no one else can join that call. So there's definitely, as when it comes to security, the conference is probably the most secure conferencing system out there because there's no way for anyone to attend your call without you knowing, which unfortunately is one of the main pain points of most conferencing services outside of Uber Conference is, you'll be on a call, there's a bunch of people talking, half the time you have no idea who's talking. Is it the intern? Is it the CEO? And even sometimes you'll be talking to a few people, and then when you say goodbye, you hear goodbye, and you're like, who was that? You have no idea. So with Uber Conference, there is no way for that to ever happen because you always see who's on your call.
Awesome. That's a really interesting way of looking at it. I hadn't really thought about that from a security perspective. All right, a couple, I guess the two biggest questions that we've had asking about the Google Guru Hangout and Errors specifically and how I've kind of put them together. Which I guess is a good thing if people are enjoying them. So first of all, somebody wants to know how I'm able to automatically add the Guru logo to the calendar invites. That's not me doing anything special. It's actually a Google Plus feature, a Google Plus event feature. I believe it's at least a Hangout on Air feature. I'm not sure if it's a Google Plus event feature as well, but it's basically just pulling in the profile picture of the account, and you get a cool event invitation on your Google Calendar through Google Plus. That's a little bit different.
Because you're using events in that case.
Right. Exactly.
That's the difference.
And then, so how I put together these Hangouts on Air specifically, there's a few different tools that we use in conjunction to put these together. So first of all, obviously I've enabled the Q&A app, which you guys are submitting questions through. Second of all, I've enabled an app called Cameraman, which allows me to select a screen, which is a little bit different than how you would normally approach a Hangout, because you want you want to always show the person that's talking, but sometimes ambient noise can accidentally switch the screen when it's not intended. So by using this Cameraman app, I can select myself when I'm talking, and then if Vincent starts talking, I can select him, and the screen will just show him. So there's not a lot of unnecessary switching back and forth. And then the kind of the title that you see down below my face right there, that's another app called the Hangout Toolbox. which is a really cool tool. You can add, your name. I've added my title there, and you can also import a logo to use, your company logo or or anything else that you might want to use.